Hey, I'm just standing here without any script or notes, which is quite rare for me to do because I just want to talk about Armored Core. There is a lot that could be said. There is a lot that should be said. And I am a guy who talks. I can do this! When Armored Core started getting close to its release and it started picking up more and more attention, I noticed that the hype behind this game was all over the place. There were a lot of people who simply had no idea what this game is, or what it's about, or what genre it even is. And then there were other people who were overly hyped because this was a game by From Software. Of course it's gonna be a masterpiece. Well, I did finish the game. And then I played it again, and from all the early reviews, it really seemed like this is gonna be another masterpiece, another Elden Ring, but with mechs. Well, some people got disappointed that this is actually a whole different genre, although on the gameplay side, there is still a lot of classic From Software design. But more importantly, people started nitpicking a thing every now and then. Funnily enough, one of those things was the graphics, which I know that everyone wants to keep pushing for Unreal Engine 5 and whatever is gonna burn our computers, but I'll be honest, every game has a threshold, and if it goes above the threshold, great! If it stays there, hey, the game is just fine. People need to realize that gameplay is king. Gameplay is always carrying everything. Fun fact, this is actually how Nintendo designs their games. Apparently, sometimes they just replace everything with pixels, and if the gameplay mechanics are still fun, that's when they start pushing for graphics. Here, I can tell you everything is totally fine. There are gonna be some scenes where you're gonna be blown away. So no, I don't believe From Software's engine is falling behind. So let's actually focus on the gameplay. This is where the core of the game is. You see, as it is with any combat-based From Software game, the combat is stellar. It is snappy, it is fluid, it is easily readable, even though at first people will have no idea what's going on, and it is by far the best part of the game. I saw that most people are going for heavy mechs with giant machine guns and rocket launchers and stuff. I just went for speed. I built a lightweight mech that was zipping around all over the place with 2 shotguns. Sure, I died the moment I got hit, but I had so much fun! And that's a really strong point of this game. You can make anything, from fast robots to chunky robots. And the longer you play, the longer the options just keep piling up. So both on the combat and on the customization of that combat, it's a big W. So far, this would match all the high scores. But then as you keep playing, you might notice a flaw every now and then. After you jump into the game, you are sent on a mission. These missions are decently varied. Sometimes you infiltrate a base, sometimes you are defending something, sometimes it is a boss fight. Yes, this is a From Software game. And the boss fights are by far the best parts of this game. Every time there was a boss fight, I had a blast. This game really knows how to sell you mech fights, especially if it is a one-on-one duel. But after you are done with the missions, you always get messages from the different characters. And so you sit there and you listen. And after you sit through the conversation, which resulted from the last mission, you may then also get a new message, which will foreshadow a future mission. So you sit there and you listen. And that's only if you get one message. Sometimes you get 2. So you sit there and you listen. Then, after you are done listening, and after you customize your mech after every mission, you can then go on to the next mission. So you click on it, and you get a briefing, which makes you feel like you are in a mech warrior army, or a corporation, really. Which means you're gonna sit there and listen. See, this is something that kind of threw me off guard. This game has a very weird structure for delivering lore. Now, don't get me wrong, the lore of Armored Core is very deep. But goddamn, you're not gonna get to it unless you really dig. From Software was always amazing at delivering stories naturally without any words. In Elden Ring, you just go through the world, you don't care about any NPCs, and you just get story. Be it through environment, through enemies, through the abilities you get, or through the gear you find. So to me it was a surprise that for Armored Core they did the exact opposite. Instead of always teasing the story by showing you things around, here people just talk. and they talk a lot, which wouldn't necessarily be bad on its own. But the issue is that when people talk, there is nothing on screen. It always shows you the two icons of the two people talking, or just one icon if it is just one person talking to you, and then a little wave showing you that they are talking. And that is their story delivery. Now, of course, you will have some impactful missions and some impactful boss fights that will deliver amazing stories on their own, but still, the main part of getting stories is sitting there and listening, which resulted in something interesting. This is a From Software game where most people actually skip the story. And I'm not just making this up. Go around, ask people, watch some streamers. You'll see that no one really cares about the story. And I assume it's really just because the game is not pushing you into engaging with it. So as an example, I'm gonna tell you how I would have done this if I had infinite budget and I was a good developer. None of which are true. Imagine if instead of spawning in the middle of the mission, you spawned a little bit further away from the main point of conflict. You would drop down and then you would have to travel to that point. Now the movement in this game is already really good, so moving around is actually part of the fun. But as you're traveling to that point, the briefing could be played on your UI there. What if instead of listening to the briefing before you got onto the mission, you had it on your UI as you played the game? That way, you would get the story while you are playing the game, which would make you engage with it. With the system they have right now, people's brains just go AFK. And also, this has a very unfortunate side effect on the pacing. For the most part, unless you find a boss and you get stuck there for like an hour or two, you're gonna go on a mission. That mission is gonna be very short. I'm talking about like 5 minutes. And then after the mission, you go back and you sit through 4 minutes of conversation. Then you get into another mission, another 5 minutes, you go back, another 4 minutes of listening. There are some cases where you just don't get any messages and you just go from a mission to mission, but usually, there is a lot of talking that just breaks the pacing a bit. Not to mention that it is a shame that those missions are really quite short. But you see, so far I'm being very critical, right? Well, let me tell you, in my opinion, this game is a very solid 8 out of 10. I still believe most people who gave it 10 out of 10 were really hyped on From Software, and maybe after they finished it, they sobered up a little bit. I don't believe this game is as perfect as something like Elden Ring. But 8 is an absolute minimum, you cannot go below that. But if you like mechs, it's gonna be a 9 out of 10. If you really like anime mechs and all the fights and all the cool everything that the game has to offer, it's gonna be a 10. Anyway, as I said, I'm being quite critical, right? This game totally has some kind of a master plan, because those are rookie mistake designs. Well, that's exactly what it is. There is a very good reason why this game actually has a bad pacing, and why the story delivery is just there in conversations during missions. You see, if you look at the system they are using, it is very clearly a system that was used in the 90s, back when every game had to be divided into levels. Back then, it was mostly done because it was a hardware limitation. You had to cut the levels into parts because of memory. So, why are they using it here? Why are they not using a semi-open world system like something like Mass Effect? Wouldn't that feel a lot better since the mechs are all about traveling around? Well, that's because Armored Core came up with a new kind of story mechanic. You see, after you beat the game, you don't beat the game. And I'm not talking about, yeah, there is a new game plus. Of course you didn't beat the game, you have to play it again. No, you don't get it. After you beat the game, you actually are not finished. As it is, the game would be quite short. I think I beat it in like 10 hours, which for a $60 game would not be a lot. So, what's going on here? Well, you see, after you beat the game the first time, what happened is that the game gave you context. And this is where things get really cool. You see, even the people who skipped all the story or didn't pay attention at all, they will know about the different characters because at the very least they fought them as bosses. They got context from the first playthrough even if they didn't pay attention. Which means that when you play the second time as New Game Plus, you will suddenly know what all the characters are from the very beginning. So they will not be just saying random names. No! You know what that guy is gonna do by the end of the story. Which, under normal circumstances, is cool, but it could get a little bit boring, right? It's gonna be the same story again, nothing new. Well, not quite. Because Armored Core actually has story decisions. That's right, sometimes you get decision missions. Sometimes when you pick one mission, something else is gonna happen for the other mission. So when you play through the game the first time, you're gonna make some decisions, and when you play again, you're gonna make other decisions, right? It all makes sense. Wrong! From Software are geniuses. It is true that the second time you play it, you are more likely to make different decisions, so you can see the other bosses that you didn't see before. But on top of this, during all the missions when something special was not happening, every now and then From Software changes something. It might be an extra line from a character, something they didn't say before, because you didn't have the context. Why would they tell you something you wouldn't understand? Well, now you know about the world, so they can go into greater detail without confusing you too much. But also, in the middle of some missions, they just give you a decision. Right there, on the spot. They ask you, hey, do you want to continue with this mission the way you did the first time? Or do you want to shuffle it up? And this is how Armored Core hooks you on New Game Plus. When you beat the game the first time, you do not beat the game. You only learn the context of this game and you pick up the gameplay mechanics, so you can rush through it the second time. But when you go through it the second time, the game will actively try to change the route. It will alter the story, it will show you new paths. And suddenly, even though the destination may be similar, the way you get there is vastly different. The crazy thing is, people who normally play this game will not get this. Most people will probably beat the game and then leave it there. But it is when you decide to play it more that the game shows you what it's capable of. Not only are there more new bosses the second time you play it, and I mean not just recallers or reuses, it is just different bosses. But also, apparently, there is a really cool thing with the endings. I'm not gonna spoil anything, but just like it is in something like Elden Ring, there are multiple choices for the ending. But without spoilers, and I really mean no spoilers because I haven't seen it myself, apparently you need to get one ending, then the second ending on the second playthrough, and then you are gonna unlock the third ending. Because again, this game is playing around context. By getting both endings, you're gonna get the context of the whole world, and so suddenly, you can change things. Again, I haven't seen it myself yet, but I'm getting ready for what the grand finale actually is gonna be. And you should too, because if you have this game, and you haven't played it 3 times, what are you doing with your life? Are you preparing for Starfield? Yeah, most of you are preparing for Starfield. But if you haven't played this game, don't play Starfield, but play this first, okay? Play this first, it's a really cool game. And yeah, I just really wanted to talk about this because this game is incredible. It is fluid, it is fun, it is great. But it does have a flaw. I still think the pacing of the story is nowhere near as good as From Software's other games, where the story just comes to you naturally, even if you don't care. Here, the pacing is not great, but it's because all the story is a setup for what it can deliver to you in the future. By which I don't mean DLCs, I literally just mean New Game Plus. So yeah, this was my rant about Armored Core. I probably angered some people by mentioning that this is not a perfect game, but I still think it is a great one, for one simple reason. I might be crazy, but I don't think I have ever seen a mech game that actually went viral.